Welcome back to Rogue Theory, where we explore the origins, influences, and playability of your favorite archetypes. Remember to like and subscribe for Albus to transform and exact his revenge as a Dark Lord monster. Next time. Maybe. Today we're covering the Tri-Brigade archetype, a group of beastmen who respect the fact that even though they reside in a fantasy world, during a pandemic you still have to wear a mask. For those of you who are new or aren't subscribed, this archetype is a sequel to the Dogmatika storyline that I covered in my earlier episode, so I highly suggest that you go back to check out that video, and make sure to subscribe to me as you don't want to miss out on future episodes, especially when certain archetypes interact with each other's storylines, and certain cards can't be covered until the next episode. With that said, let's get into it. The Iron Beast Brigade consists of 6 monsters, 3 being main deck monsters and 3 being link monsters. They also have 2 spell cards and 2 trap cards. Along with those, however, they also have 1 non-Tri-Brigade story-based fusion and effect monster.
Hello there.
But don't worry, you'll find out why that is soon enough. Now, if you were paying attention, you'll have noticed a little earlier that I called this archetype the Iron Beast Brigade, rather than the Tri-Brigade. Well, while the Tri-Brigade is a good name, based loosely on the katakana's translation, and attempts to reference that the archetype is comprised of 3 different monster types, the average player is missing out on the archetype's true name based on the kanji and all the cleverness dual-meaning languages can imply. Curious? Well, while some kanji can have dual meaning in Japanese, katakana gives most characters an extra layer of subtlety on how they should be pronounced and their original influences. For instance, Tribrigade, which uses the combination of the words tribe and brigade, reference the 3 different monster types for the archetype. In the case of the kanji, however, the name should directly translate to the Iron Beast Brigade. While I love the sound and power of that name and how it references the monster's steampunk artwork and design, I'll be sticking to the name Tribrigade, as it's not anywhere near as long or confusing to pronounce on the tongue. The Tribrigades are a continued piece of lore in the overarching storyline of Albus and directly counter the Dogmatika archetype, as the Tribrigades reference the video game Bloodborne rather than their counterpart, which is based on Dark Souls. This can be seen by the general color palettes used in both archetypes, their corresponding references by style of weaponry and clothing, and more obvious and direct references when comparing character and game design. For the Tri-Brigades, there are 2 obvious ways to interpret their story, but when we consider the new Dogmatika support cards like Hashin, which is referencing the Arabic root for the word assassin, and Dragmatism, which is shown to reference Ecclesia's removal from the church, we can whittle down our options into one logical and narrative flow. The nation of Dogmatika is a neighboring country within the Abyss. While the nation of Dogmatika focuses on religion and the power of the quote-unquote holy relics, the Tri-Brigade is a nation of science and open-mindedness. But because they live next to a land ruled by religion that could easily declare war at the orders of Maximus, the Tri-Brigade are tasked to police their borders as an attempt to ward off any military invasion. While on duty, members of the Tri-Brigade notice in the no man's land that borders between their 2 countries, Albus and Ecclesia, in a tense deadlock, neither one of them attacking the other. But coming up the rear is the rest of the Dogmatika forces, charging towards Albus. In response, the Tri-Brigade rush out in equal force to counter the movements of the Dogmatika. It is there on the border that the forces of both sides stand waiting for the other to make a move as they hold the line. On the left, it is Filget the fruitless flower that holds back her side from making any hostile action. On the right, however, there the Hashin stand posed with blades and fists, willing to strike but waiting for the opportunity to do so. From the behavior of the 2, we can see that Ecclesia begins to believe that Albus is not an evil being, and starts to doubt the stories that the church told her of the beastmen. She orders the Dogmatika assassins to stand down, and rather than listening to the orders of their holy knight in training, the Hashin, much like the Templars from Assassin's Creed, only take orders from the top and decide that she is no longer worthy of the holy mark anointed on her forehead that grants her power. Thus they choose to forcefully remove the Stigmatica that grants her extraordinary power. With this act, the Tri-Brigade then attempt to protect Ecclesia and rush forward to protect her, as by the actions of the Hashin, she has essentially become excommunicated from the Dogmatika Church. With no one to hold them back, the Hashin attack and kill Ceres, who moves in to protect Ecclesia and Albus. With this, Albus, once again bitter and filled with anger, transforms and fuses with Ceres' lifeless body to protect Ecclesia's limp and lifeless body. During the battle, Shriek the Wicked Wings appears from the skies and lands on the battlefield to help his allies retreat. But by the time he makes it there, Fleur-de-Lis also catches up and rushes Shriek. The 2 fight it out and both fall in battle, but neither of them die as both sides pull them out of the fight and retreat into safety. Albus is then later calmed down and promised by Shriek that they intend no harm to him and Ecclesia, who it turns out wasn't dead but simply passed out from the pain that occurred when the Hashin removed her Stigmatica. And that is where our story currently ends, for both the Dogmatika and the Tri-Brigade archetypes. While I doubt this is the narrative conclusion in the story of Albus and Ecclesia, I'm sure now with everything you know, having watched both videos, we can expect some form of retaliation or future support from either archetype. Fallen of Albus. While I'm glad to see Albus alive and kicking and a part of his second archetype, he still doesn't have any inherent synergy with this new archetype, unless he gets a second printing as a new level 4 beast monster to represent him falling out of his beast fusion form after the fight with the Dogmatika. But as it stands, I'm still not thrilled that his effect is just a weaker super poly. Tri-Brigade, Naval, Ceres, and Fractor all have one effect in common. They can all turbo out any beast-related link monster from the extra deck by banishing monsters from your graveyard equal to its link rating. And while that means you won't be reviving these monsters from the graveyard, their individual benefits often outweigh that con. Individually, Tri-Brigade Naval can freely search out any other Tri-Brigade monster in the archetype whenever he hits the graveyard. And since he's a level 1, you have some great options in terms of turboing him out of the deck and quickly removing him from the field as link fodder or with other cards to produce further advantage. Tri-Brigade Fractor lets you dump itself and any beast-related monster to the graveyard to utilize the archetype's banish mechanics and the resource advantage engine of Tri-Brigade Naval, who will let you easily get to a link 3 off of just one card. Tri-Brigade Ceres is the real homie. Not only did he save Albus's life, he also helped Albus protect Ecclesia from the enemy, and if that isn't the mark of a true bro, then what is? Now, while his monster effect doesn't replicate this story element, the fact that you can use him as a monster extender and that he, like all main deck monsters, can turbo out any beast or beast-related link monster is probably enough of a reason to run him at 3 in any beast-based deck. Stigmorva Dragon Brigand. While this card can help provide some synergy with the Tri-Brigade archetype, and it is meant to help us fill the logical gaps in the archetype storyline, design, and lore, this card isn't necessarily the best, as it requires a level 8 or higher monster, and this deck doesn't inherently have one that it runs. Tri-Brigade's archetype, however, also lacks a way to dump extra deck monsters, and because of that, this card isn't worth running in a pure variant, as whatever card would summon or dump this card would merely be trading away hand advantage. However, if you were to mix the Dragma engine in this deck, you can utilize this monster more effectively and also end on even stronger boards. Tri-Brigade Forget the Fruitless Flower is one of the best link 2s that any beast-related archetype could get, as she easily lets you summon out an extra beast-related monster from your hand to extend your combos further, or to link climb with her so you can use her mini-star Yugioh-like effect when she hits the graveyard to better sculpt your hand for whatever play you're about to make. Tri-Brigade Lugal the Silver Bullet. While his effect is weaker than the others in the archetype, Lugal provides an effective way to summon monsters on your opponent's turn to trigger your Link 4 monster's effect. While this might seem rather worthless, you have to understand you can link climb into him with one card, and only using a normal summon. Add in the dozens of extenders that anyone can play, and you should be more than able to revive and utilize this effect consistently to prevent OTKs and provide disruption with the use of other cards. Tri-Brigade Shriek the Wicked Wings. Besides being one of the coolest designed monsters in the game, Shriek has tons of potential as a boss monster or an engine piece to reach higher link ratings with cards like Cattle Call. On his own and in his archetype, however, he provides the deck an easy way to consistently bring him out every turn by searching for any beast-related monster. Tri-Brigade Line serves to outfit the deck with a strategy that can utilize other archetypes and generic beast-related support to help push the consistency of this deck and to take advantage of the Dogmatika playstyle by playing into a new combo line at the end of your added archetype's original combo. However, it can also be used at the start of your turn if the deck you are playing doesn't have any conflicting monster summons. Tri-Brigade Airborne. While summoning from the deck a beast-related monster can be effective, the restriction on only summoning link monsters from the extra deck for the rest of the turn makes this a less than stellar card in terms of generic support, as there aren't a lot of amazing options in beast-related link monsters, and their decks don't often utilize them to begin with. Tri-Brigade Revolt. Okay, first I want you to imagine this was searchable. Then I want you to imagine this as a quick play spell card. Okay, now that you have a good idea of what it could be with this card, behold this rather weak design. First, it lacks consistency as it isn't searchable in the archetype at the moment of recording. The only way to resolve that issue would be to make it a quick play spell, but seeing as how each spell and trap card has the name Tribrigade in it, Konami clearly wishes to leave design space for spell and trap cards to be searchable in some future wave of support. So, we don't have to worry too much, but for now, in pure builds, this has to be ran at 2 or 3. Tribrigade Oath is designed based off of the story and serves to indicate the compatibility that this archetype has with non-Tribrigade monsters, while also showing the bridge lore between the Dogmatika and the Tri-Brigade archetypes and their stories that interact with Albus, and as of now, Ecclesia. This can be seen both by the artwork and the card effect, which allows this deck to be used as an engine in almost any other deck, as it only needs a single link monster to utilize its effect. and its banish effect requires nothing to negate a spell or trap, representing the recovery Ecclesia has after the effects of the equipped spell Dogmatism. Now that we know all the cards that are currently released in this archetype and how the new Dogmatika cards interact with this storyline and the playability of each card, we can say that this deck is designed with two goals in mind. One, to provide generic beast-related support to many archetypes that desperately lack consistency, and two, to make a deck that, in theory, was built in the same way that the Ice Spears were made, but instead playable and meta-impacting upon release. For combos, I only have two things to show you. First, this is what the deck can do off of one card. With any beast-related card in hand, we can easily summon a Link 4 off of this combo. On its own, however, we cycle through our deck for one card and decide if what we draw is better than what we have. While it doesn't seem like much, having anywhere between 1 to 4 hand traps in your opening hand and a chance at cycling a dead card into a negate or interruption should be enough of a reason for you to see the power of this deck inherently. And lastly, to give you a glimpse of the power that this deck holds when other archetypes are combined with the Tri-Brigades, they can easily set up the infinite negation loop with just 2 cards. However, the way you end your board in this scenario leaves your infinite negate to be easily ran over in the battle phase after stopping 1 card. But seeing as how you can still use Mist Valley Avion, you'll still have wasted their battle phase, a card in their hand, and still have a second negate you can resummon at the end of their turn for follow-up play on yours. Here's the list I'm currently playing around with. While I could show you a dozen decks that improve with the usage of this archetype, it's easier to say that like the Dogmatikas, you can use these cards in almost any deck. However, unlike the Dogmatikas, the Tri-Brigade engine never stops floating, no matter what. Hey guys, hope you enjoyed my video on the Tri-Brigade. I just reached 1,000 subscribers, got my first patron on Patreon, and I'm currently working on producing my Patreon voted archetype for the month of August, the Phantom Knights. If you want to access the monthly polls where you suggest what archetypes are next, feel free to hit the link in the description down below. With that said, thank you guys so much. This is Rogue Theory, passing turn.